Welcome to another episode of the Three Man Weave College Basketball Podcast. It's just Kai and Jim. You're listening to the sounds of Kai. Matthew in the Yoshi costume, for you YouTubers out there, is on vacation. He's in Hilton Head enjoying the sights and sounds, Jim, I assume, of the Atlantic Ocean. Whatever else you do in Hilton Head. Never been. Heard it's nice. A tournament is there, an MTE. Is that right? Or is that Myrtle Beach? I'm thinking of Myrtle Beach, probably.
There's the Conway, South Carolina tournament, the Myrtle
Yes.
Beach Invitational, which is not really Myrtle Beach. I think true Myrtle Beach hardos would tell you that, Kai, that it's a misnomer itself. I'm surprised there's not an event in Hilton Head. We've got the Greenbrier coming this year. We've got Palm Springs getting spots. Any vacation go-to location should have a great MTE.
Indeed. Well, we have a great podcast today. Jim, we have our top 100 reactions podcast. We did this a couple years ago when we made our own top 100 list. The previous 2 years running, we have been with the Almanac, so it's been more of a combined effort with guys from Heat Check, Jeff Goodman, Rob Douster, to create a list. So we didn't feel the need to quote unquote defend ourselves or explain our rankings. But with the new Trilly Donovan sponsored burner Discord, where we released our very own top 100 players list earlier this week, we heard the reactions and we wanted to break them down. Some of them I think were very justified. Some were not, but some were. And I think we owe it to the people out there to kind of break down why we ranked players certain ways. So that is what we shall do. Matthew sent in some notes. Very nice of him to send in notes for us to read for him on his behalf. Yeah, that's the gist, Jimmy.
Yeah, we're excited about it. I mean, the last couple of years, like you said, we've only been 30% of the voting, so it didn't feel like ours. I know we've always used the Almanac conference rankings for our previews when we get to conference previews in the fall. Excited to get back to our own for that. But yeah, we've got our list of 100 that had some holes punched in it, had some feedback given. And it's easier to respond in an audio format, Kai. And I know for people that are not members of the Discord, join it. Go do that. What are you
Please.
doing? We will also at least still mention the ratings of the guys we're talking about. Like, hey, this guy was controversial, re-rated him, or we ranked him here, to at least give you the context of why. And maybe if someone specifically said, how could you rank X in front of Y? We will give you that context, the listener, so that you can at least understand where the debate is coming from.
Yes, hard exercise to do. I challenge you out there to do your own list. It is difficult. There are a lot of good players, a lot of different ways you can slice it. Biases come into play. Subjective, to say the least. Please do join that Discord, if you will. That is, in our opinion, and in fast becoming the best college basketball community on the internet. Discord is simply a way for people to interact with each other, to chat about, well, in this case, college basketball. Of course, it's used for all sorts of things, but this Discord is all college basketball. There are channels for every single team, conference. We have our own specific channels where we will release our previews. We are writing all 362 teams this year, 364, 363, whatever it is now, 360 plus. We're writing all those previews this year. We release them through the Discord, top 100 players list. Future gambling content will go there. So it really is a really fun, great college basketball environment. $6 a month, basically 3 months equals the Almanac. So if you want to think about it that way, and to justify your purchase, we think it's well worth it. That link is in the description of this video. It will be in the link to the description of the podcast. It's also pinned to our Twitter handle, 3MW_CBB.
Yeah, you get recruiting news from Trilly. You get all these incredible AMAs that we've had. We just had a head coach from Toledo, Todd Kowalczyk, an assistant coach from SLU, Zach Boisvert. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Not sure. We've got upcoming ones with Eamon Brennan, a writer. We've got another head coach, Greg Campy. We've got the head of CBB Analytics, Nick Canova. We've got the director of recruiting from LaSalle. Just all kinds of different college basketball backgrounds that give you a really unique perspective and a lot of interaction with these people. It's not just like, hey, they're going to talk at you. You get your questions answered. And I think that's a really great way to get into the sport and match with crazy junkies like us, Kai. It's why we belong there.
Indeed. Well, that's our pitch. Go join the Discord Subscribe to the YouTube channel and podcast, of course, helps us out. Please do rate and review us 5 stars. That'd be wonderful. Thank you very much. That's it. That's the house cleaning. We're going to do some Roots Roundup, do some news and notes, and then we're going to get into our top 100 players' reactions. Jim, Roots Roundup time now.
Let's do it, Kai. And of course, before we get into Roots Roundup, we got to give a shout out to our loyal sponsor, just mentioned, CBB Analytics, a terrific statistical website that I find myself living on as we write our previews. We are getting close to being completely done with our top 50 previews, which will come out daily starting July 22nd. But CBB Analytics does a great job of helping out with that. You can see all kinds of on-off information. You've got shot charts, really good data visualization for whether players are good, whether they're bad. Kai, we like simple things. Green equal good.
Yes.
Red equal bad. And CBB Analytics does a nice job of displaying that. There's all kinds of different features you can dive into there. Heat maps for shooting. It's just really a valuable resource for people like us writing, junkies that want to learn more about their team and their team's future opponents, and even coaching staffs. Over 21 D1 or over 25, D1 coaching staffs were using it last year. Feels like if it's good enough for them and helpful for them, fans can find a way to get use out of it as well. And if you want to sign up as a new customer, you can use promo code WEAVE, WEAVE, gets you $40 off a subscription, which is basically a free month for the user tier. Again, that's what we're using. There's all kinds of great stuff on that user tier, so highly recommend doing that. Pro tier is more for like coaching staffs, that kind of thing. But check it out. We think you'll enjoy it and be even overwhelmed by the amount of information there. Great website, great people over at CBB Analytics. So remember that promo code WEAVE when you're signing up. Okay, Kai, key headlines in the world of college basketball. Not really any. I didn't think there was anything on the level of wins above bubble and Bart Torvik being added to the team sheet. So we didn't go with anything there. I did see, and I think this is kind of wrapped up in the same announcement, in 2026, when the Final Four is in Indianapolis, the D1, D2, D3, and NIT championships will all be in the same city at the same time. So folks, start clearing your schedule for early April of 2026. If you are a basketball junkie, everyone and their mother will be there. All kinds of coaches, players, of course, obviously the teams that are in those Final Fours. Kai, it's going to be a hotbed of hoops come 2026.
Yes, indeed, Jim. I'm excited for that Final Four. Phoenix, no more. Houston, no more. Got some good cities coming up. Can't wait.
Yeah, San Antonio 2025. Yeah, we are excited about the Final Four and the future of it. Nothing in the coaching news world. A little bit in the recruiting. Just a couple, right around 100 ranked recruits in the class of 2025. We'll give a shout out to a point guard, Nigel James, headed to Marquette, the 85th ranked recruit per 24/7 Sports. Kai's the next one in a long line of Long Island Lutheran, Lehigh point guards. Andre Curbelo might ring a bell for you folks out there. Jaden Reed was a freshman starter at South Florida this year. Lehigh, definitely a factory of basketball prospects. Then also 4-star shooting guard Akbar Wahid III. Kai, is taking him a trap? Is that the laziest joke possibly make right there?
You're doing a Star Wars reference.
I am. Haha. Admiral Akbar, he says the trap. What a king that guy is. But he's headed to Boston College, 4-star here for Earl Grant. And a nice pull from the DMV, considering that's supposed to be where Kevin Willard and Ed Cooley are doing their best work. Pretty surprising one there for Grant, and a nice job, a nice get for the Eagles. Nothing in the transfer world to mention, Kai. Just other random news and notes we got to mention. Everybody thinking Matt's on vacation in the Southeast. Hey, he's probably in the Big J capital of the world, the Peach Jam right now,
Yes.
where every single journalist has to let you know they are watching AJ DeBonsa and Tyron Stokes. Here's a grainy picture of him warming up, shooting a left-handed layup. Get excited. It does feel like, Kai, there's just a summer summit of here's why I'm a little better as a college basketball guy than you, because I'm at Peach Jam and you're not.
Yes. Does this sound like we're being bitter because we're independent college basketball enthusiasts and we're not Big J journos? Do Big J journos sniff each other's butts like dogs when they meet each other at the Pearl Jam to get to know each other? That's
Peach Jam, Pearl Jam.
The Peach Jam.
But first,
Goodman and
Peach
Borzello
Jam.
sniffing each other's butts. Hey, how you doing? How you doing? Yeah,
Yeah. I'm sure that's how they get to know each other, Kai. And maybe we'll get to that level someday. Maybe we'll be butt sniffers. Sounds
I
exciting.
Jim, I've never cared about high school recruiting. I never will. I just won't.
Well, yeah, it's a huge deal out there. People love to theorize about the player that could be on their team in 4 years rather than care about the players that are on their team now. That's just an easier, more wishful thinking type of world. But Kai, that's it for Roots Roundup. So we've just got to get into this top 100 player list. No Matt here, so either that means we're going to be a lot more long-winded or it's going to be a quicker episode. We'll find out.
Yeah, we will find out. Hey, here we go. Let me mark this time. Good, fantastic. Because we are our own producers here. We're so independent. We're so independent. Shout out to CVB Analytics though for the sponsorship. Okay, so again, we released a top 100 player list in the Discord, the Burn Discord. Jim, Matt, and I had sort of different methods, I think, to getting to the final list. For me, Jim had a handy dandy pool of players that he kind of picked out for Matt and I, like 300, 400 guys. I think he did a pretty good job of getting the breadth of who we would vote for. Anyways, personally, I tiered them. I tried to rank them within the tiers, and then I made a list, and then I saw Jim and Matt's list, and I was like, wow, I'm way off here. I'm way off here. Let's reconcile a little bit. That was kind of the behind the scenes process for me. Jim, similar, I assume.
Yeah, I went through that initial list, which Kai, a couple guys that were not on that initial list, so maybe I screwed you.
Uh
That
oh.
ended up being some feedback. No Bay and Dongo. I can't remember if I put him on there from Georgia Tech, and I did not have Stevie Mitchell from Marquette. So
Yeah.
that was a piece of feedback that we got. We'll discuss that more later.
We will.
But for anyone mad about that, it's Jim's fault that Kai didn't vote for them because I didn't have him on the initial 350 person list. So hand up there. But yeah, I went through and I just tagged guys that I thought had to 100% lock be on there. I think it was right around 55 names, maybe 53 or 56. Couldn't remember exactly what. Pulled them over to a different sheet, tried to put them in loose order, and then brought in another 100 or so to get up to 150, and then just kind of comb back through that list over and over again. Oh, wait, I have player X in front of player Y. I can't even make that case myself. I better shift that around and find a way to, or find a way to justify it. And that ended up working out okay. Kai, I was decently happy with my list, but as is the case with any one of these things, I could have just kept staring at it and kept making tweaks. If you gave me another 3 months to finalize my list before the start of the season, I would have a very different one than I have now, just with constant feedback and more thinking and more statistical research. But I think our consensus list ended up being pretty solid.
I do too. That's the beauty of having three of us. I think all three of us, our individual lists were so there's holes in each of them, and I think together it helps smooth it out a little bit.
What Kai did Lewis Sacher write our lists?
See the guy that wrote Holes, starring
Yes, he
Stanley
is. All
Yelnats?
right.
Very good.
Yeah, way to get that.
Uh, it always surprises me which players are called out as guys that didn't make the list. I know the Marquette guy that called out Stevie Mitchell. He's a listener to the pod, big fan.
Yep.
I'm a big fan of his. I mean, he's probably a fan of ours as well. Stevie Mitchell surprises me. We'll get into it, but I just didn't that name didn't even cross my mind. I'll be honest. When I was making the top 100 list, Jim Bay and Dongo did not either. That he just
I,
did not.
I think when you watch a certain like conference or two or even three, if you feel very immersed in those, you have a strong sense of who you think the best players are in that league on those teams. And you just kind of forget how big the world of college basketball is. If you're ranking players in the NBA, you're pulling from 30 teams.
Yep.
100 players is like, you know, 30% of that entire league. 100 players is 1% of college basketball. Like
Yes.
it is such a narrow way to do it. And you kind of run into is the team that I have number one, their third best player, better than the number one option on team number 46. And there's just so many, even like you start to factor in some of the mid-major guys, there's so many teams to narrow that down to 100 players is nearly impossible. And that's how you end up with, some random names getting thrown out by people.
Yeah. So let's start with a little conference breakdown. Now, I don't think this list is 100% accurate. I think Matt took this from one of our Discord members did a chat GPT that kind of summarized players by conferences on our list. I did a quick footing in my head here. It's short of 100, but regardless, majority Big Ten. Big Ten was the winner. 26 players per this list. Again, put an error in your head of like 2 or 3. So we'll say 25 to 30 players were from the Big Ten. That makes sense. 18 teams makes sense.
It
The
does. And Kai, the highest ranked Big Ten player was only 14th though. So
Yes,
it's exactly how we feel about the league going into the year. Not a ton of elite talent, but a incredible amount of depth down the league.
indeed. I won't read through all the conferences, but it's clear that the bigger conferences with the more teams had more players. The Big East had a very top heavy list. They had a bunch of elite guys ranked in the top 15, but only 10 players overall made the list. That reflects the conference, I think. But team wise, Jim, this one's interesting. I like this breakdown here because in our heads, we think, okay, if you have multiple top 100 guys, you must be towards the top of the country in terms of rank overall. Well, for a lot of these teams, that worked out. The most players for any team was four. That was Kansas, Houston, Alabama. Okay, all three of those teams are consensus top five, mostly by media, top 10 for sure. And then Indiana was the fourth team with four players in our list. One thing is not like the other. Now, some people do have Indiana in the top 10. We are a little lower in them. In fact, we ranked them 16th. That was actually the preview we released for free to get everyone a taste of what they expect in Discord. But Jim, our translation of Indiana, our Doughton Mike Woodson kind of explains the difference in the players versus the rank.
Yeah, and I hope that gives Hoosier fans some perspective too, that like, God, there are people clamoring for Cannon Carlisle to get ranked.
Yeah.
At Indiana, you don't get five players in this top 100 list if Houston and Kansas don't. Like that's not how it works, especially if a guy that was on a bad team last year that was streaky and didn't start half the year and had a 91 O rating. I'm not putting Cannon Carlisle in there.
Right.
But yeah, you kind of look at this guy and you're thinking, okay, I have Indiana equivalent in top 100 players with Alabama, Houston, and Kansas. Why am I not ranking them top five? And of
Mm-hmm.
course, that trickles down to coaching.
Mm-hmm.
But just looking at the list and seeing a name like that, you have to at least justify to yourself, man, should I be higher in Indiana, or am I really steadfast that this collection of talent is not going to get maximized? And that's why I'm rating the players so highly, but not the team. It just makes you think. And I think that's helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And the teams with three players made sense: Duke, Baylor, Gonzaga, UConn. So the eight teams that have more than three players, spoiler, all these teams are in my top 15, maybe except Indiana. That it makes sense. Now there are some teams out there, Cincy, for instance, who had four honorable mention players and zero in the top 100, who I'm very high on, and that's a different category. It's hey, you have a ton of great players. We're not really sure who your best player is, but we know you have four or five great players that are all worthy of inclusion of this list, but they got left out for differences in voting and opinions on who is the best player on that team.
Yeah, I think that's worth mentioning is that three different guys are in the top 100 from a team like Cincinnati or even Kentucky. Auburn had a little bit of this, Texas. Guys, it wasn't like we all just ranked a bunch of guys outside the top 100. We just had differing opinions on who is the 75th best player in the country from Cincinnati. You know, one guy, me, thinks it's Dan Skillings. Matt is a giant Seamus Lukosius fan. There's also some love for Dylan Mitchell. Aziz Bandago as a shot blocker. That's almost a vote of confidence in Cincinnati.
Yeah,
Hey, you don't have the top 10 guy. You don't have your Ryan Kalkbrenner or Janai Broom, but your team is super balanced. We saw how good they were down the stretch last year, and maybe one of them emerges and becomes that guy this season. But we know there's balance. We know there are multiple guys capable of being top 100 level, and that's a triumph in itself for the Bearcats.
yeah, absolutely. Multiple teams with two players in the list. Cincinnati and Kentucky, four honorable mention players. So again, teams that are balanced. Texas, Ole Miss, and Louisville, three honorable mention players as well. As Matt points out, I believe this is Matt, Jim. Sorry for not giving you credit if this was you. Only about 25 to 30 teams had a top 100 player. It is hard to make this list, as Jim said. It's like 1% of the players in college basketball. So I wouldn't feel super slighted if your guy's not on there, but it's just the nature of things. But okay, I'm ready to dive in. Are you ready to dive in, Jim?
Yeah, Kai, I was just going to do some quick math.
Yes, please.
So there are 13 scholarships per team. 80 high major team or like power conference teams, just your top five leagues, so excluding A10, American, etc. That's 1,000 spots, over 1,000 spots. Let's say only eight of them are relevant. Okay, like 700. Boom, you're already down to, if you're doing one player per team from those guys,
Yeah.
it gets dicey so quickly. It's just a different style of list for college than it would be for professionals.
Yes. Yes, indeed, Jim. Okay. We have a nice curated list here from our buddy Jim. He went through the Discord chatter and kind of picked out stuff that was called out, um, whether pre-list, honestly, or um, guys that were included, weird rankings, all discourse from the Discord, which is what that community is for. It's for talking and breaking down college hoops. It's for diehard college hoops fans. I would say even casual. If you're really into college basketball, check it out. Uh, so starting at the top, we will give away our number one player. It was R.J. Davis from North Carolina. He is the only first-team All-American returning to college basketball this year. Matt and I both ranked him number one. However, Jim had a little different opinion. This R.J. Davis discussion quickly devolved into a Mark Sears versus R.J. Davis discussion. Mark Sears is great. I think he was our number four player, Jim. And there were some questions on who should be rated higher. And then, Jim, your number one player was, drumroll please, Janai Broome.
Yes, Janai.
So
Janai. There's no I in team, but there is an I in Janai. Kai.
Sears versus Davis is an interesting debate. I went with Davis because of the All American factor. He he was incredible last year. His turnover rate was below 10, which is impossible for the usage he had. And he averaged 20 plus points per game for a top 10 team as an All American. I think having him number one, that was my rationale. But Mark Sears is certainly a fantastic player.
You'll never look bad for ranking RJ Davis number one. Like that's just he's almost a lock to be a top five player. There's just no chance that ends up looking silly. So I have no qualms with that. I did go with Broome, and I feel okay in the sense that Kai, where do you have Auburn ranked nationally? Are they kind of top 10-ish,
Oh, they're
or
up
where do
there.
you have them?
Yeah. I was high on them. I got my rankings right here. Jimmy, 9.
Nine? Okay. So in the fact that they only had one top 100 player and it's Broome, I just think he's so central to the identity of what they do. Like rim dominance on both ends of the court. They're number one nationally in 2 point percentage defense. I think he is a gigantic part of that. He started to add the three ball last year, almost one per game on a pretty efficient conversion rate. I was very surprised when he returned. They were my second NCAA title future. When he announced he was coming back, I quickly locked in a 40-1 on Auburn. And I wanted to put him up there, Kai, because I think the big man defense is a little more valuable than what RJ Davis and Mark Sears are providing. And that was, so key to who Auburn is. I went with Brew number one.
Yeah, defense often forgotten in these lists, let's be honest. And guys with not gaudy counting stats often forgotten in these lists. And it's hard. It's hard to balance projection and stats and team situation. We both agree Mark Sears is in a fantastic situation to Alabama. Um, Not taking away from what a player he is, but he is in the perfect system to put up gaudy stats. Good.
Kai, how do you feel about Mark Sears versus RJ Davis? Well, they played head to head in the tournament, and RJ Davis went 4 for 20, and
Yeah.
he only had two less points than Mark Sears. But yeah, he had a rough outing. He also had seven assists, one turnover, and was 8 for 9 from the line, and ended up with an okay stat line despite being 0 for 9 from three. But yeah, I think that was some people that were pro Sears were like, look, he won head to head, and there's so much more that goes into that.
Sure. Yeah. Anyways, Cooper Flagg was a big discussion point in the Discord. He, of course, is the number one pick in next year's NBA draft, all but certain. He is a freshman, of course. We ranked him second overall.
He ended up number two in the consensus, yes, and nobody ranked him lower than third individually.
Yep. So there was some chatter of, are we too high on freshmen, I suppose. Now, we only ranked three other freshmen, Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey from Rutgers, and also VJ Edgecombe from Baylor. So I thought we were pretty conservative in terms of the freshmen we rated. We did not rate, I cannot pronounce his name from Duke, I'm sorry, Malak?
Malowich? Yeah, I don't know if it's Malowich or Malowich, but yeah, he
A top 5 recruit that was not ranked by us, Jim. So we were trying to be a little picky, but I would say we defaulted to the four best freshmen in the country.
Yeah, I know he's rated up there. I think part of it is his incredible professional upside. He is a massive, monstrous human being with kind of intriguing perimeter touch. But I still think maybe Duke's best lineups will be like Flag and Malik Brown from Syracuse and Mason Gillis, like all together or something. Maybe not having him on the floor. Derek Lively was really good at Duke, but I don't think he was a top 100 player. He was playing like half the game, and he was a better professional than he was in college. I think some of like the vertical spacing that the NBA takes advantage of is more conducive to that kind of guy. I love the four freshmen we did rank. I've watched a bunch of them. They all make me drop my jaw constantly. Edgecombe, I believe, narrowly got up to second among our freshmen behind Flag. But yeah, Kai, only four. I think we wanted to make sure we were covered on the ones we felt were truly elite. But then as you get further down the freshman list, it's what's his role going to be? Is he actually going to be a go-to guy enough to get high up on the list? And maybe you could say Bethea from Miami's going to score a ton of points. I think so. I think Trey Johnson at Texas is a pure scorer. Maybe he belongs here, but it was just safer in the end to go with some of the veterans outside of the like top five guys that we have our sights set on.
We've struggled ranking freshmen in the past. I think one of our
Yes.
first years we've done top 100, we rated too many freshmen and rated them too highly. And then we countered that by ranking Zion Williamson way too low the following season.
It's like 38th or
Yeah,
something.
which
Yeah, that
yeah, you
sucked.
look bad for sure. Cooper Flag is a can't miss for me. Uh, there's no way this guy's going to be bad, and he could win Player of the Year. He's that good, so I don't think it was bad for us to rate him number two.
Yeah, people have kind of clowned the highlights of him playing with the USA Select team in Vegas against the Olympic team. But I mean, it matters that an 18-year-old could hold up in that
Right.
situation. And he was on maybe the best high school team ever at Montverde, the best player on it. He's incredible defensively. It's not just a scoring thing for him. He makes plays defensively. He can pass, he can shoot, he can go off the bounce. I mean, he had games for Maine United in the AAU circuit where he had like 32 points, 17 rebounds, 8 assists, 12 blocks. It's like, all right, this guy's a freak. I am just completely in on him being elite right off the bat. Felt pretty good ranking him top three.
Agreed. Okay, let's talk point guards. A lot of point guard chatter amongst the rankings. Now, point guards, I think, inherently have a bit of an advantage being ranked in these lists. It's the most important position on the floor, generally speaking. Obviously, there are exceptions to that, but generally speaking, your point guard, your creator, your point of attack leader is your best player, or at least most important. Wade Taylor's ranking from Texas A&M was a little controversial. People thought we were too high on him. I am guilty of being very high on Wade Taylor, Jim. I still believe in him. I know he had kind of a down year from his terrific junior season. I'm still a pretty big believer in him. I think he's one of the best point guards in college basketball. Was comfortable where we rated him in the end, which was, I'm sorry to get the exact number for you guys out there.
12th. 12th
12.
was the consensus rating.
Yeah, so I get it. A little high. Actually, Matt was the highest on him. He had him top 10. You were a little lower on Taylor, but not that low.
Yeah, I mean, he has some incredible skills. Like he gets to the line at will. He feels like when he's on, you can't stop him. Like he's going for 30, and he had some of his biggest games on the biggest stage last year, which I think really opened people's eyes and were like, wow, okay, Wade Taylor, look at him go. And he's super important for Texas A&M because there are a whole bunch of junkyard dogs that need like it's like the snow dogs racing the Iditarod. They need the lead dog. And that's what Wade Taylor does. He actually has some offensive pop. He made 98 threes last year. Nobody else on the team had more than 35.
Yeah.
Like that's all they have, or at least all they had last year in terms of shooting. So he was especially valuable in his situation. I could see being a little more down on him because he's erratic and he can go cold and he can sometimes even shoot them out of a game. But they're so reliant on him that I think it's okay to have him up in that All-American range.
Agreed, Jim. Agreed. Okay. Two players that were compared to each other in the Discord, which I think is funny just given where the conversation was on Braden Smith last
I think Matt
preseason.
started this. I think Matt
Oh,
started
did he?
this.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, Braden Smith versus Caleb Love turned into a discussion in the Discord. People hated on Braden Smith last preseason. I want it known. No one thought he was a top 100 guy. I thought he was a top 100 guy. Everyone hated him from the FDU loss. Then he has a fantastic season. And now there is a lot of support for him being higher than Caleb Love in this ranking. To me, Jim, I think all three of us had Caleb Love above Braden Smith. To me, it's hard to rank him below. Caleb Love, for all of his erraticness and the fact that he can shoot guys out of his team out of the game, he was Pac-12 Player of the Year. He put up big numbers. He was a third-team All-American. Talent-wise, he is a top 15 player. We rated him 15th, Braden Smith 19th. And Smith, who I love and is a great table setter, and maybe I'd rather have him on my team. Maybe that's an answer for this question. He has some proving to do in terms of creation and scoring in life without Zach Edey.
Yeah, I feel like so much of the feedback for this sometimes comes down to what's the last thing I saw from the
Right.
guy. And the last thing we saw from Braden Smith was being outstanding at the Final Four, feeding Zach Edey constantly, getting him layups and dunks and great seal position inside. And whereas with Caleb Love, we saw him brick Arizona out of the tournament, which he has done a couple times now in his collegiate career. Now, he also shot them to the NCAA tournament final back when he's at UNC as a sophomore, so he's fully capable of putting on incredible displays. The at Oregon game this year we watched at a bar here in Chicago, and he was just kind of jaw dropping. I think Braden Smith, I'm a little tentative because so much of what he did was setting up Edey and playing off him. And Purdue ran a little more ball screen action this year than they pretty much ever have because of how good those two were together and the chemistry they had. Now, Trey Kaufman-Renn's a good interior scorer. They've got other 7-footers that could potentially be useful. But do we see a little bit of a step back from Smith with him getting much more defensive attention and not having a 7'4" safety net to just kind of lob it up to and rack up assists that way? We'll see.
Yeah.
But remember, this guy was a 3-star recruit coming into high school. And like you said, his game against FDU, he had 7 points and 7 turnovers. And people were like, that guy sucks. And, a year later, look where we are.
He's awesome. Love Braden Smith, but I think Caleb Love over him was the right thing to do in the end for a top 100 list.
Kai, would you rank Braden Smith ahead of Caleb Love if he shaved the goatee?
It's not a good look. It's not a good look.
It's a bad look.
And I'm surprised I like him so much because that's not a good look. But he's just awesome. He's an awesome player. He really is.
Braden Smith should play a helmet sport like football or hockey where you don't quite see it as
sure
often.
He would excel. He's impressed the heck out of me through 2 years. All right, more point guard talk. Yeah, Jackson Shellstad. Say that a bunch of times fast. Jackson Shellstad. We ranked him 24th. This raised a couple eyebrows, except for the one Oregon fan who pegged his over-under in the Discord at 23.5. I mean, that was
My God.
That was
so good.
Incredible.
Yeah. It's like, I know these guys are obsessed with him. They're going to be really high on him.
Jim, I went back, and the question is, did we go overboard? He did not have the most efficient season last year that you kind of expect from a top 25 guy the following year. But, man, his freshman to sophomore leap, I think is going to be incredible. I know you're on board. And I went back and watched a little bit of tape after we made this list here. Nope, I'm cool with rating him where we did, Jim. He's so electric, dynamic. I think he's going to be great.
He's a killer. He's kind of got the MFR gene. And I think last year he felt like he had to defer to Kusnard a little bit. Towards the end of the year, like half their offense was just ISO Kusnard at the top of the key, 19 feet away, and let him go to work, and he would bully ball his way into the paint. This year it's going to be a little more Shellstad's show. And I think we kind of see the rare efficiency and usage increase. I think he's fully capable of that. And also remember, he didn't really have a preseason last year. He was hurt coming into the year, sort of thrown into the fire, but quickly became a 35-minute-a-game guy where they could not have him off the floor and was a big-time shot maker. I think we'll see a little bit more expansion of his game. The comparisons to Peyton Pritchard are endless. They went to the same high school. They are friends. They wear the same jersey number. They're both at Oregon. I think we kind of see a similar-ish leap in production. Only Oregon's going to be even better this year than the sophomore year Pritchard team was. I, I, I could see us maybe going a little too far here, or that being a thing, but He also scored like 75 points in a pro-am game recently, so I was just chugging Kool-Aid.
Jackson Shellstad's show. Jackson Shellstad's show. Unique New York. Okay.
There we go.
Bunch of point guards, Jim, rated in the 30s for us, actually. So it's kind of fun to compare all these guys together. Zakai Ziegler came in at 30 from Tennessee. Miles Rice from Indiana at 33. Tyrese Proctor, if you want to call him a point guard, we'll just include him for this exercise, number 34. Donovan Dent at 35 from New Mexico. Ace Baldwin at 36 from Penn State. And then also Bruce Thornton, again, combo guard, but number 41. It was interesting that these guys kind of ranked in the same stratosphere. I would say that feedback was generally okay with where we rated these guys. I saw a little bit of Proctor is too high discussion. I didn't really get much feedback from the other players, Jim. But what do you think of where we ended up with these 6 guys?
Yeah, Thornton got really high because Matt went a little bonkers
He
on
did.
Bruce Thornton. Had him 24th, which he had him ahead of Caleb Love and Braden Smith, which I thought was, oh God, Matt, you're getting crazy here. I love Thornton, but not quite not quite sure he merits that high of a ranking. Ziegler, I think could even be a little higher. I just wrote Tennessee today, and he was a 0 for the first 10 games of the year. And remember, he was coming off a February torn ACL. And then the last 26 games of the year, he averaged 15 a game, 7 assists, 2 turnovers, shot 44% from the field, 37% from three, and is like, this is the guy that's going to be the linchpin for Tennessee this year. And so now with him being the guy, no connect there anymore. I think we could have maybe even gone a little more aggressive with Ziegler. The other guys, I was definitely lower on Proctor. I think he's just kind of like a serviceable. He's not quite what's a game manager. He's better than a game manager because he can knock down shots and he's a very good defender. But until he starts actually getting to the rim and using a little bit more of his length to beat defenders, I'm an outside the top 50 guy on Proctor. But I like that we were all high end Dent and no one pushed
Yes.
back on that. I think there's like a general acceptance that he's going to explode now that House and Mashburn are out of the picture.
Yeah, he's awesome. Proctor has that. We had another discussion of post hype guys that didn't quite break out like we thought they would in the previous season that might just do it this year. Proctor could be that guy. Jim, I was looking closer at Thornton. So Matt must have sorted by O rating or something to get his list going. Thornton had an incredible offensive rating, 121. He had a 9% turnover rate. He was like RJ Davis, insane usage, insane assist rate, insanely low turnover rate. To his credit, he had a great year. He's not the best shooter. He did not have the best shooting season, but Thornton really did play well, and he should be a lot better this year with a better team, presumably. And perhaps there's a little bit of understanding to Matt's rating. He ended up in a good spot. 41, I think, is the correct place for him, or at least close to
Yep.
it.
Yep. I like him behind that other group that we're discussing here, the Ziegler, Dent, even Ace Baldwin. Thornton, number 2 in the country in assist to turnover ratio, 4-1. Pretty
Yeah,
good.
incredible.
He made plays and did not cough the ball up. For a team that didn't even make the NCAA tournament and fired its coach, that's relatively impressive. Also, Kai, a point of order, somebody in the chat, Macon Jones. Doesn't Braden Smith have a beard now? I Googled it. Yes, and he looks so much better. He's going to have a monster year. I might rank him 5th now. I mean, he looks like an adult. It's like a guy maturing into figuring out his body. I wish I could grow a beard like that. He looks great. Shout out Braden Smith's beard.
Embrace the beard. Okay, head-to-head matchup here. Coleman Hawkins checking in at number 40 on our list. Grant Nelson checking in at number 42. I thought Nelson's rating would cause more of a stir. The Alabama fans in the Discord must have been sleeping because this guy has a ton of
I
hype.
heard they were banned, Kai. Is what the rumor
right?
was.
Oh,
Many of
no.
them were troll type guys.
Well, they would have been extra trolly for Grant Nelson. So Nelson had a lot of hype in the NCAA tournament, in the SEC tournament, because he had some big games. Nate Oates himself called him a pro in the press conference of the Final Four. I buy it. I see the skill set. Now he's not always consistent. He wasn't always consistent last year. Maybe that was a bit of a byproduct of him stepping up to the power leagues for the first time, coming over from North Dakota State. I personally would rather have Grant Nelson than Coleman Hawkins, but Jim, I also am kind of biased against Coleman Hawkins because I just cannot stand his antics on the floor. Um, both Hawkins, by the way, horrible defender on off wise and by every defensive metric, which are not all reliable necessarily, but still a bit of an eyesore. I'm sure Nelson doesn't grade out that great either in that category. Who would you rather have?
I would rather have Coleman Hawkins,
Okay.
Kai.
All right.
I think, especially, I'm not planning on either of them being the best player on my team. So I like Hawkins' floor spacing a little bit. I think he's actually a really good passer, which is very helpful. Nelson, not really. He can get kind of tunnel vision, but he is a mismatch. He's hard to guard because he can pull you out to the perimeter. Now, not a great shooter, but he can put the ball on the floor. And we saw him really use that last year to his advantage. He had that giant dunk over Klingon in the NCAA tournament that kind of got people out of their seats. But yeah, I'm still riding with Hawkins. I know those on-off numbers are stark. I forget who pointed out to me. It might have been Dylan Burkhart from UM Hoops, but the 3 games that Hawkins missed were like monster by game blowouts that would have, skewed the off numbers where he's not playing for 3 giant slaughter fests that made everybody else's numbers look a lot better. But yeah, I'm narrowly going Hawkins, Kai. However, I don't really want to pay him $2 million. I don't know what Grant Nelson got paid in terms of NIL. If I have a salary cap, maybe Nelson's making a much more affordable wage in this era.
I just tweeted better player debate: Coleman Hawkins, Grant Nelson. We'll see what comes back.
Oh,
No other
neither of
context.
those guys are polarizing at all. That should be fun. Yeah.
Okay, moving on. Hey, little Kansas talk here. A point guard we did not mention in the point guard smattering that we just talked about is DeJuan Harris from Kansas. 47th overall, however, had a wide range amongst the Weavers. I was a lot higher on Harris. If you go by counting stats, I understand you being a little hesitant to rate Harris, maybe even usage. To me, he's a winner. He has that intangible quality in point guards and leaders that I think is hard to measure, but also incredibly important and makes him so valuable. Hence my high rating on him. However, Jim, I understand that he has his flaws as well.
Yeah, if you've got wings that can score and a big man that can finish, DeJuan Harris is the best point guard you can possibly have. If your wings can't shoot and maybe your big man is really deficient defensively and you need more offensive production from him, he starts to look shaky. The team looks shaky. Late in the year without McCullough, they needed a lot more from Harris and they struggled. I mean, they lost by 30 to Houston, 20 to Cincinnati, 21 to Gonzaga without McCullough. And that was kind of in my head as I was rating both KJ Adams and DeJuan Harris, that when they had to slide up the pecking order, it got a little ugly for the Jayhawks. But now that they're back in their appropriate roles, you can put DeJuan Harris as high as you want. It comes back to the debate that, maybe we could even have right now. If how much do these guys, how do you rate somebody like DeJuan Harris, where of course he impacts winning when he's got good players around him, he completely lifts them up. But if you had a team of DeJuan Harris's, I think it would be a bad team. Like they kind of need it's like the symbiote in Venom. It's nothing on its own, but together both the host and the symbiote become crazy strong and become like super powered. They need like the high usage guy to feed off of, somebody like Harris, and of course he's got it this year with Kansas, so he'll be just fine.
Well, yeah, those guys are hard to rank. It's system guys who are awesome in a particular system, and it's guys that really carry their own team. They might be inefficient because they carry their own team and have to do more than the average bear out there, and it makes this list even harder subjectively. Sticking with Kansas, I was surprised. We have KJ Adams 61 on our list. I think KJ Adams is awesome. But there's a lot of pushback to us including him and having him at 61. I'm shocked, Jim. I think he doesn't shoot well, obviously, but he does so many little things. And he's your quintessential, I have this guy on the floor at all times because he just helps my team win. Kind of like Harris. I think he's a winner, and he's a beast, is frankly how I'm going to summarize him.
Yeah, I think Bill Self recruited the portal this offseason knowing he has like 2 awesome complementary guys in Harris and Adams, and he wanted to get a little bit more alpha scoring, which he did to a store, and even Griffin a little bit. Yeah, Adams is one of maybe like six people in the entire country. I'm not going to make a list off the top of my head here, but where you can truly say he can guard 1 through 5. Like I am comfortable
Yeah,
with KJ Adams guarding like any player in the country. Cam Matthews from Mississippi State would put on that list. I don't know who else, but that is incredibly valuable. He can switch anything. He's a monster finisher inside. He shot over 60% from the field for 2 straight years because he knows his role. He's an alley-oop threat. He can pass. I think that's like an underrated thing of the way he smartly moves the ball, especially playing with Dickinson, having a guy that can enter the post to him. He does all the little things just like Harris, and both those guys, their value just gets augmented when they're around high scorers like they are now.
indeed. Well said. Yeah, his rebounding rates are weird. They are very low. Um, that does not meet the eye test for me. Because when I watch Adams, he gets his hands on everything, and it's strange to see his rebounding rate so low. Confusing profile there for sure.
Yeah, it's like I don't know. Playing with Dickinson, the offensive
Maybe.
rebound rate dropped a little bit this year, but yeah, he's never been a great defensive rebounder.
Mhm.
I wonder if I'm just theorizing here. Brooke Lopez is constantly known for this in the NBA. He averages like 6 rebounds a game, but his team is always way better rebounding when he's on the floor
He
because he
just
just
takes
eats
bodies
two
out.
people.
Yeah.
Yep. Just like, all right, I don't care about the glory. You guys go grab the board. Giannis, you can average
Yeah.
15 a game. I'll average 6. That's cool with me. So maybe that's what he
I
is.
like that theory, Jim. I'll look closer this year at Adams. Uh,
Yeah.
okay, two guys that I would say we like a lot. Maybe not the Duke guy, but Ryan Conwell for Xavier is certainly a player that we have said over and over this season, off season, as a guy that is going to be incredible at his new spot. He was an Indiana State guy. This guy's a future pro. Caleb Foster, another guy who maybe controversially was ranked 58th, Conwell 57th, Foster 58th. Foster maybe a little high for some people's likings. For me, I see a lot of upside with Foster. Sophomore year, I watched him last year, pretty impressed. I think at times he was Duke's best player on the floor, certainly in spurts. So I
Yeah, the
believe in the
Michigan
jump.
Michigan State game, Champions
Yes.
Classic, that one was a big standout
Yeah,
for him. Yep.
absolutely. And Conwell, Jim, for me, you worry about guys translating to the power level. I think he's a can't miss translation. He does everything on the floor well. Defense, offense, shooting, it doesn't matter. Athleticism. I think 57 is fine for him. I think he's incredible.
Yeah, I think for a couple of the Indiana State guys, I mentioned this in the Discord today with some of the translation for Jason Kent and Julian Larry.
Mhm.
They're going outside of the system that really optimized them. I mean, Conwell's going to maybe the best optimizer of mid-major guards in the entire country. Look what Sule Boom did at Xavier. Look what Quincy Oliveri and Davian McKnight did at Xavier last year. You get him up tempo, going downhill. He's I'm just kidding, not transcendent. He's terrific in transition, Kai. That's what I was trying to spit out. And he's also, like you said, an awesome shooter. The splits were outrageously good last year. Maybe the offense won't be quite as set up for him with Avila just dishing terrific passes left and right. But I'm with you. I think he is a future pro. Brian Gregory talked him up to me at South Florida 2 off seasons ago as like, wow, we got a diamond in the rough. He was solid, okay down there as a freshman, and then really, really showed up getting back home to Indiana. I think he's going to be a monster. I fully believe in it. If he like you mentioned him as your like dark horse out of nowhere All American, sure, yes, absolutely could see it, especially with how fast Xavier plays. The counting stats should be there.
Planting our flag, Ryan Conwell. Hooray. All right, Jim, we shift to Mizzou, our alma mater. So we have to
Tigers, yeah.
recognize our biases, or if we have any. So we have two Mizzou guys in this list: Tony Perkins, transfer from Iowa, and Mark Mitchell from Duke. Mark Mitchell was controversial. A lot of people saying he sucks. I say I included Mark Mitchell. I included three guys. I included Tamar Bates as well. We can talk about him in a bit. Mark Mitchell, Jim, for me, got this guy was a 5-star recruit. He's going into a new role and has plenty of upside left on the table. I think he's going to be just fine. That was my reasoning for including him in the top 100.
Yeah, I also think he's better than people think because he's not elite. Like they look at him and they're like, oh, he doesn't do anything amazingly well, but he's an outstanding cutter. He's a great offensive rebounder. He's a great defender. A year ago, people were like, Well, Duke would have gone way farther in the NCAA tournament if Mitchell was around for the Tennessee game.
Yeah,
Now, a year later, he kind of got the yip shooting threes, and people have tossed him in the trash. And the
that's it.
truth is probably somewhere in the middle. I think he's going to a system that Dennis Gates runs that is very good for his player type. Caleb Brown, Kobe Brown, excuse me, completely blossomed there. Noah Carter became an SEC player there after being meh in the Missouri Valley. He was solid, not elite. I think that fits him well. The up tempo, he's going to get mismatch opportunities. I couldn't rank anybody from last year's disaster, Kai, so I left Tamar Bates out. But the two Tigers I did rank, I think, are great, great pulls in the portal. And honestly, Perkins didn't really get pushed back. It was Mitchell that just kind of stirred the pot with people. I think he will be better than people expect this year.
I'm noticing, and I said this in Discord, there's a trend of the way people evaluate players this season, and it's all 3-point percentage. It's all 3-point percentage. There's no context. There's no outlier considerations. There's no defensive considerations. Or what does he do else? What does he do on the floor other than shoot threes? If you shoot well from three, people think you're really good. If you don't shoot well from three, people think you're really bad. That seems to be the connecting thread I'm seeing from people complaining about certain guys.
Yeah, and to Mitchell's credit, he figured it out. He's like, "Oh, I have the yips. I'm not making any." He didn't take a three in his final 4 games of the season. He took four in his final 7 games of the year, or final 8. Like he figured out what he was good at, which was cutting off the ball. And yes, he was quiet in some of those games, but I still think the fit where he's going, plus the pedigree, plus some of the per minute stuff that he's actually been really good at, sets up pretty well for his future.
UConn guy Samson Johnson. Admittedly, I felt bullied to raise him, Jim. UMF
Oh, did you?
bullied me. Yes. Because on his own, I don't think he's a top 100 player. We rated him 70th. I think a lot of that was the UConn bump, and you could argue UConn deserves that bump with their system. He's going to be great within UConn, within the confines of UConn, but he does two things well. He catches lobs, he blocks shots, and you can add rebounding to that as well if you want. That is what he
Yeah,
is. Is he
yeah.
deserving of a top 100 spot for that?
And it's a tough look ranking him when he fouled out in 5 minutes against Zach Edey the last time we saw him play basketball. You know,
Yes.
that is a harsh final evaluation. Part of why I ranked him, Kai, where I did is because I think Terrace Reed kind of sucks.
Mhm.
And I saw Kevin Sweeney's feedback was like, oh, I wouldn't have ranked Samson Johnson because I'm unsure of his role with Reed being there. So this is just my own personal opinion shining through that I'm not high on Reed. And I think Johnson has been in that development pipeline longer where they have proven they know what they're doing at UConn and optimizing guys. And I thought he was pretty darn good in the limited time that he was a starter. I mean, he's not like a big time scorer, but he can protect the rim as long as he kind of cuts down on the fouls, which again was really, really bad last time we saw him. I think he's going to be the like 1A option or even the number one, like play 25 minutes a game where Reed is getting 15. And in the UConn system, that's worth a lot for me.
73% from the field. I think all dunks.
See
was
ball, dunk ball.
was Johnson
Yes.
last year. I mean, yeah, he's the best dunker like in terms of like volume dunking in college basketball. He's probably right up there. Uh, some St. Joe's feedback. Fun. How about this? We rated Eric Reynolds. I think we had him in the 80s. Got to check the exact spot here.
Maybe 73? I don't know.
73. Correct, Jim. Eric Reynolds. Yeah, fantastic player. However, Zach Boisvert Jim or Bovar. Is it French?
Let's just say Zach. ZB. ZB.
ZB from SLU, assistant coach, and also Kevin Sweeney, who popped in and gave his 2 cents on the rankings, said they'd rather have Xavier Brown or watch out for Xavier Brown. The freshman to sophomore leap this year is coming for him for sure. He had a great freshman year. He was freshman of the year in the A10. But guys, we're not rating him over Eric Reynolds. Eric Reynolds, first team All A10 last year. 2 years ago, the scariest player in the conference per A10 coaches. Xavier Brown was not on an all-conference team last year in the A10. He's a great player. He's going to be good. Eric Reynolds is the alpha in St. Joe's. He is a top 100 player in St. Joe's.
Yeah, I don't know if Xavier Brown hit a wall, but I watched the entire A10 tournament and Xavier Brown sucked. Like he sucked. He was 8 for 29 from the field. He had 5 assists and 7 turnovers combined in the 3 games. And then you get into the NIT game against Seton Hall, and he was productive. He had 10 assists, but again, struggled to shoot. And Eric Reynolds was a monster. Eric Reynolds had 57 points combined in their final two games. He basically won them. Sorry, not the final two. Final three, he had 75. Yeah, 75 in their final three. Basically won them the Richmond game by himself. They came back from and ended up getting against VCU. He's the better player, and Brown has great upside, but I'm not gonna just bump him ahead because of potential. Like it feels like a Saver Brown could be really good. He could even be Eric Reynolds.
Yeah.
Nope, I'm gonna take the guy that already is Eric Reynolds. That's what I'm gonna go with.
Eric Reynolds is awesome. Please watch Eric Reynolds this year. You're not going to like Billy Lang's style, or not style, but
Defense, yeah.
coaching ability. But no offense to Lang, kind of. But he's great. Okay. Ooh, Jim, Mackenzie Mbako from Indiana. He was our fourth Indiana guy, I believe. We had
Yep.
Ballo, Rice,
Renew.
and Renew above him, which is correct. Jim ranked him outside the top 100. He ended up 79th on our list. I think people thought he was too low all
Yeah,
around.
definitely.
Why did you rank him the way you did?
It just came down to how high can I rank four Hoosiers? I think he is like clearly the fourth best of that quadrumvirate. How's that for a word?
Hmm.
His defense is a big part of why their defense sucked last year. Like he just gets lost off the ball. He gets lazy. The helping too far off shooters thing was like a Mackenzie Mbako. I'm seeing you. You're way too far off shooters. The shooting did come around last year. Like he was awful to start the year, but he shot 38% from deep in league play. So if he's able to do that, that's rather important. But Mike Woodson doesn't really let his team shoot threes. Like they are always low in 3-point attempt rate. And again, his best thing is offense, and he's probably their fourth offensive option. So I have a hard time like pumping him all the way up to 50. You know, if he was the best player on a team, and he's going to average like 20 a game, maybe I get a little bit higher. Or even if he was Indiana's like second or third best guy, I think that'd be a better fit for him. He was going to be playing the four most of the time. Instead, he's playing the three. He's a little out of position. He's not a great perimeter defender. And he doesn't do a whole lot for me off the bounce. He's not a great rebounder. Like, what else does he do besides shoot? And the shooting wasn't there all of last year, for some of last year, I mean. So I just ended up knocking him down. I do think our consensus ranking is better than my own individual ranking on Mbako, but I wouldn't have put him like top 60. I think that's crazy.
When you watch him, you see the talent. I buy the talent, but the defense really was a problem, especially beginning of the year. It was like, what is he even? Is he aware that the other team has the ball?
Yeah.
It was crazy, and I like to say I'd like to think that I have more confidence in Woodson to coach that out of him, but I don't, because that's another thing with Mike Woodson. So I think it's pretty fair we rated him again. I think the consensus rating was better than Jim's and better than my ranking. I had him a bit higher as well.
Yeah, a lot of the Indiana stuff started to feel like you're forgetting how many teams there are. Like
Yes.
I mentioned the Carlisle thing. People were like, even were wondering if Trey Galloway would crack it. It's like, well, you're not getting six people in the top 100.
Not on
That's for
my
sure.
watch, Jim. Not on my
No,
watch.
absolutely not. So yeah, sorry to Mbako, but again, I think where we landed consensus wise inside the top 80 is pretty solid for him.
Yes. More point guard talk, because we have to. Some controversial rankings. Okay, so these guys, there was problems with all of them. I think we'll go through them. Doug McDaniel at 82 for K-State. Pop Isaacs at 87 for Creighton. Dallin Hall from BYU at 89. Jeremy Fears from Michigan State at 94. Davon Smith, the new St. John's guard, at 96. And Boopy Miller, 99, transferred to
Boopy.
SMU. Almost all these guys are transfers except Hall and Fears. People thought we were lower, I think, on McDaniel, Isaacs,
Even Davon Smith.
maybe
I think
Davon
people were
Smith as
surprised
well.
where he was at. Yep.
People thought we were crazy to rank Jeremy Fears. He did average like 4 points a game last year. I understand the feedback there. I think Miller or Boopy was fine. Some Wake guys thought that he was like their fifth best player. I don't
Kevin
think that's
Sweeney said he wouldn't even consider him for top 100. So that's why I wanted to bring him up, which I think is wild. He was really good
We
last
watched
year.
different games. At times he was their best player. So I don't know what their go look at his efficiency stats too. I mean, he was incredible for Wake last year. Jeremy Fears. Let's touch on that one real quick. This was projection from us. more than anything. Uh, Rising sophomore, we love that. Michigan State guards. Look at Izzo's history the past several years, maybe ever. He always has high producing guards that sort of lead his team, or at least in recent, we'll say last decade or so. Fears is that next guy. We rated Akins too, but Fears is going to have the ball in his hands more. I think he have a huge leap. He has a pedigree, and I mean the 4 points a game means nothing to me. Playing behind Tyson Walker and Hogard last year, he could bust out next season. Next season, Jim. I think he does.
The passing vision is unbelievable. He has like terrific feel. People, this guy, to your three-point shooting
This is what
thing,
it is.
people are like, well, he can't shoot. And he's small. He's not that small. He's 6'2". He's a little thin, but he has elite vision. And just like when he's coming around a ball screen, he has the put the guy in jail behind you. He has the sense for how to create angles and make the defense get a little unsure of themselves and then skip it to the open shooter. That's the stuff I saw coming into last year when he got so hyped. And I've seen it a little bit this offseason now that he's recovered from getting shot, which stinks. That's not
Right.
helpful.
Let's not forget about that little detail.
Yeah, I made this point too in the Discord. They had Trey Holloman, Tyson Walker, and AJ Hogard. You can easily fill 40 minutes of point guard time
Mm-hmm.
with those guys if you're not feeling good about a freshman that's coming in. Tom Izzo was not about that. He's getting 15 minutes a game, playing double-digit minutes in both of their December Big Ten games. I think that expressed the confidence that Izzo had in him and what he is seeing in him during practice. And now that they have such a void in terms of available shots and available ball handling minutes, I am feeling good about Fears stepping into that and being the guy.
Totally agreed. 100%. As far as Doug McDaniel goes, I was a little lower on him. Fully admit he could be very good. I was a fan of his before last season. Um, the suspension and away games, that part kind of weirded me out. You're not a locker room guy if you're suspended for away games. So that dampened his rating a little bit for me. Maybe it shouldn't have. Maybe he comes around for K State. I hope he does. But that's why I was a little lower on him. Pop Isaacs, he wasn't great last season, efficiency wise for Texas Tech. I just wrote Creighton's preview. I'm a little worried about him meshing into Creighton's system because of that. He is kind of a I need the ball in my hands type of guy, more of a volume shooter. Still a great player, but I think rating them where we did ended up being okay.
Yeah, it's a little bit cautious with McDaniel. Like that's one where it could be a home run. Like, yes, it could be Marquise Noel. Oh my God, look at this
Mm-hmm.
jitterbug get everywhere on the floor and he can really shoot. Now, this is one where you have to remember defense. Doug McDaniel is going to be a negative defensively. I know Jerome Tang is brilliant on that end, but they're going to have to like scheme to make sure he's not a liability. In a lot of other players, you don't have to do that. So I think that was a factor. And then even last year, look, I got pumped about Tyler Perry going into that system and maybe being in that role. And he was good, but not great. And there's a chance that McDaniel has that as well. So I didn't want to go too overboard, Kaya, but I did feel like Tang's coaching plus the natural talent that is there, the speed, he is fast,
Yeah,
was enough to get him in the top 100 for sure.
absolutely. Yes. Do you want to touch on any of these other guys? People appreciated that we mentioned Dallin Hall. He was I was
Generally,
lower,
yes.
but he played for a great team last year. And he was their point guard. I think he deserves mentioning.
Yeah, and this was another one that Sweeney's feedback was, oh, I wouldn't have even considered him in the new system. And I kind of go the other way, where last year was so balanced playmaking wise for BYU, and he still like kind of shone through and was the kind of get to the bucket guy, was the one that could actually put a little bit of rim pressure on for them while also still providing shooting. And maybe Igor, the mad Russian that's coming into maybe it's not even Russian, he might be Turkish. I'll Kai check me on that while I go
I
on. But
watched his tape, by the way.
maybe
I did like his tape.
okay, yeah. So maybe he ends up being the guy with the
Russian.
ball in his hands more, and he is Russian. Okay, and Hall takes more of a back seat. But I was really impressed in such a balanced system, the way he asserted himself in that point guard spot. Even 2 years ago, it felt like they fell off a cliff when he wasn't on the floor. And it's just kind of I think he might be BYU's best player, and I don't think they're going to be bad. So
Yeah.
if you want to knock him down, he's not somebody I think it has to be in the top 100, but I wanted to get him up there.
Well
Let's
said.
see who else. Who else here, Kai? I'm trying to see if any of them. We hit Boopy, Davon Smith. I just think his effectiveness gets a little bit neutered playing next to Kadari Richmond. I would have
Yeah.
ranked him higher if it was his own team, but they've kind of got to split playmaking duties, which hurts him. And you hit Pop Isaac, so yeah.
Okay, some non-inclusions. Okay, so guys that people were surprised that we did not rank, had beef with us, whatever you want to say. Cincinnati did lead this sort of discussion. And again, we mentioned at the beginning of the section here, they had four honorable mention players: Skillings, Lukosius, Dylan Mitchell, and Bendago. Uh, that's the problem. They don't have a clear go-to guy for me. I think each player has a problem, like an issue that you can kind of pick at, and I think all of them have a bunch of upside and reasons to be big on them. For me, Lukosius is Cincy's top player. I think he handles the ball a ton. He is often relied on for scoring. I understand how you say Skillings. Skillings is the one guy, apparently, the one exception to the rule about shooting that people don't seem to care about for him. Bendago anchors the defense. He's a great pick. I was pretty high on Dylan Mitchell because I think his defense is literally among the best in the country, and I think he is that connector piece that Cincy needed. But Jim, what do you think about Cincy?
Yeah, Skillings was my guy there. Watched a couple of games late, and he was fantastic. I watched the smashing of Kansas when he had 25 points and was all over the place. And he's also terrific defensively. I mean, this is the more we have this conversation, the more you're like, wow, these guys love Cincy. Cincy should be
I love
awesome this
Cincy.
year. And yeah, I think that is really the ultimate conclusion is that they have a lot of great pieces that seemingly should complement each other. Like the coach's biggest weakness is defense. Now you have Skillings and Dylan Mitchell as two of the most like versatile wing defensive pieces in the country. So that really helps. Jizzle James, I think, could have the big breakout. I
Yeah.
know people were pushing for him. Like
And Dayton
there's a lot
Thomas
of
is good too.
yeah, a lot of optionality for Cincy. So they're in good shape despite not landing a guy quite in the top 100.
Butler fans not happy with us leaving out both Pierre Brooks and Jameel Telfort. I did give Pierre Brooks a spot on my ballot at least. He impressed the hell out of me last year. He really was their best scorer for sure. Telfort may have been their best overall player. I think Jim not including them is fine. Butler ultimately was not an elite team last season, and those guys had to do quite a bit. But I understand the arguments for them including them in the ranking.
Yeah, I kind of don't think Butler's gonna be top 50 again. Like I don't
Same.
know that they added enough. Brooks for me was he's an awesome shooter over the top. Some like even when he's not shooting threes, his best attribute is just kind of
Yeah,
like
pull ups.
shooting over a guy in the paint. Yeah. Telfort's got a little more versatility, creation, can pass a little better. I like him grabbing and going on the defensive glass. I don't know. Neither of them really like popped to me as top 100. I could have gone a little higher in Telfort, but there's thin margins here, Kai, and they weren't at the top of my margins.
Yes, Syracuse was mentioned. Did JJ Starling miss our top 100, Jim?
Yeah,
I
because I
think he
didn't
did.
rank him
You
top
didn't rank him at
150.
all. So Matt and I are pretty high on him. For me, it's an upside thing. I understand he was not efficient last season. I still think he has a lot of untapped potential. A little bit of eye test. I probably saw some of his better games. Um, I included him. I think he's gonna be quite good. You did not. Why did you hate him?
I saw his bad ones, I guess. I think he stinks. I think he takes bad shots. I think he doesn't guard anybody. And that was a real problem last year. The inefficiency thing, he per CBB analytics, he was in the first percentile nationally in net rating. Like
Not good.
Syracuse was all the time way better when he was off the floor. I'm just not a fan,
He
unfortunately.
he did improve quite a bit from Notre Dame his freshman season, pretty much across the board. So we got to give him a little bit of credit for that. We were really
He
high
went
on him
from
too,
crap. Yeah,
coming in last
coming
year.
in, he was supposed to be really good at Notre Dame and
So maybe
didn't hit
he's
didn't
a
hit there.
maybe he's a bit of a post hype guy as well at Syracuse.
It could be.
Texas Tech, Darian Williams. This was you can include Kobe Brea in here too. This was my 3 point percentage being enamored by these guys. The problem for me and Williams, who I think is a great player, It's the usage. I'm not sure how I can put a guy who is a fantastic player in his role as a third scorer, as a spot up option in a top 100 list when there are so many guys that are doing more on their individual teams. That was kind of what held me back on Williams. However, I do appreciate his mentioning and see how he could be included in the list.
Yeah, versatile guy, winning player, played better down the stretch until he got hurt. And I think that's part of why they lost NC State because he was completely gimpy on the ankle. Even though he played all 40, he was not the same. And yeah, what part of his strengths are contributes as a passer, as a rebounder, defender, really good, versatile, different positions. So yeah, it doesn't quite pop as much offensively, and your mileage varies. It may vary on that kind of guy.
Kentucky, some complaints about not having more than one guy. Jackson Robinson made it for us. He's fantastic. But Kentucky's kind of like Cincinnati in that they have a bunch of guys in their team who you think, well, who's number two behind Robinson, or even number one ahead of Robinson? They have a lot of balance. I think we mentioned that three or four guys were honorable mentions for Kentucky. Again, choose kind of who you want to include from that roster. I'm pretty high on Kentucky next season, but it just kind of shook out. We only had one guy in the top 100.
Yeah, just say that a video came out of them scrimmaging their TBT team. A lot of highlights back and forth. Amari Williams passing really popped in the video, like a couple back doors in that Pope scheme. He had one that he like caught on a short roll and before even landing, kicked it to a corner for an open three. He could end up sneaky good. Kind of, we've kind of railed against his motor, but the
Bad motor.
passing I think should show up well there. Yeah.
We rated a couple Arkansas guys, but not Jonas Adu. Okay, I hear you. Plays 24 minutes a game. That's kind of what held me back a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, you could see us like this is one of the guys I ranked top 100 that did not make it. The defense, he kind of added a mid-range jumper last year, but the last thing we saw of him was getting benched without foul trouble for JP Estrella
Yeah,
guarding Zach Edey.
yeah,
That's kind of problematic.
yeah.
And there's a chance he splits minutes like 2020 with Big Z because everybody loves Big Z and he's a NBA prospect. Those two are not playing together. So you could see minute split being even, and Adu just doesn't quite make it in top 100.
Sticking in the SEC, Auburn. So we talked about Broom. Jim's number one guy. Ended up number three for us overall, I think. Broom. Chaz Baker Mazzara. J.
I like calling him Chaz.
Chad,
We're going with that.
Chad
Yes,
Baker Mazzara.
we're going Chaz. That's good. Yeah.
I saw the Z. It got me in my head. And then
Yep.
JP Pegues, transfer from Furman, were mentioned. Honorable mention. Baker Mazzara is a guy that probably looks like a snub, I think, halfway through this season. However, to me, it was a little bit unclear. Is he going to have a similar role as last year where he's playing mostly off the bench, literally 21 minutes per game? Again, that's hard for me to include in a top 100 list, even though he does do so much on the floor. Pegues, I'm just not totally convinced he translates one for one from his incredible Furman run. That's what held me back on him. Broom, of course, with a bullet. Top 5 player in the country.
Yeah, excited to see Pegues in the system because it emphasizes pull-up shooting, and he's like truly elite at that. So that's kind of why I ranked him highly. Baker Mazzara, hey, his minutes per game would be higher if it wasn't only 3 in the final game of the year. Can't complain about not being ranked if you get ejected in the NCAA tournament first round 3 minutes in. So
Probably
you earned
put
this,
in my
Chad.
head as well. Yeah, Chaz.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't be a Chad. Yeah. Be more of a Chaz this year.
Two big guys. I like this one. Owen Freeman for Iowa. Maxime Reynaud from Stanford. Is he still at Stanford? Yes, he is, right?
Yes.
He
He portaled but returned. Yep.
Matt included Reynaud on his list. He had a great year, by the way, and he was impressive. I watched him, and I think I saw one of his best games, and I was like, man, this guy's like kind of unstoppable for Stanford. He had moments. Owen Freeman had a great year for Iowa. Matt did not include him on his list. Jim and I were a little bit confused. He would have been a top 100 player had Matt ranked
Matt
him.
loves Owen Freeman.
Yeah.
I was so shocked that he was like kind of dismissive when I was like, "Hey, do you want to add him?" He's like,
If
whatever.
he literally just ranked him 150, I think he would have been in there. He was right on the cusp. Yeah, I can see. Well, I did include Freeman, but I can see an argument for Reno in the top 100 too. Again, just tough to kind of get everybody into this list.
Yeah, Kyle Smith has a great track record with bigs. Reno could have a monster season in the new system. It's not Jared Hass anymore. That's a good thing.
Yes.
And then, yeah, Freeman, I think could really ascend. No more Ben Krikke. It is clear runway for him to be like the 30-minute a game best big man on a Iowa team that's had a couple good big guys recently, Kai, particularly
Yes.
one Luka Garza.
Yeah, indeed. He was pretty good. Okay, we mentioned these two guys kind of at the front of the show. Stevie Mitchell, not included in honorable mention. Neither was Bay and Dongo. I will say this: our buddy Nick, big Marquette fan, I think it was 2 years ago, lamented at how bad Stevie Mitchell was, and that he was actively costing Marquette ball games. He has improved since that season. He still can't shoot. I know he's a great defender. He's not really a point guard, right? Is he gonna play point guard this season for Marquette? Does he have to with Kolek out? When he filled in at point guard his freshman year, he wasn't good. Now it's been 2 years. Maybe he's got that DeJuan Harris factor, that winning factor. For me, I think I still need to see a little bit more of it, Jim, before I consider ranking him.
Yeah, I think the pushback on the shooting, he shot 41% in Big East play, but it was less than one make a game. Like, I don't think defenses care if he takes threes, whether he's making 40% or 20%. They know that the volume isn't going to be there enough to be that worried about him. But he's a great defender,
Great
makes
defender.
plays happen. He's one of those guys that like sneaks offensive rebounds just by like creeping in the baseline. He's a good cutter. I get that he does a lot of winning stuff, but if you had five guys that were Stevie Mitchell caliber on your team, I think the team would be bad. So that
Mhm.
I sort of buy it, and Evan Mia's rankings love him. I think some of the on-off stuff is really high on him, but for me, I just need you to bring a little bit more than the fill in the blank stuff to be a top 100 player. For ranking the best, third best players in the country, he's probably in like the top 10, but only a few of those guys made this list.
What was the player? I think Evan Mia's rankings. Grayson Murphy from Belmont,
Yeah, he was like number one in the
like
country or
number one.
something. Yeah,
Grain of salt, guys, on those
grain of
rankings.
salt.
It's an algorithm. Let's grain of salt. I see people quote those a lot.
They're helpful and
Helpful,
I think directionally
yes.
right, but not law.
Bandongo, Georgia Tech wasn't good last year, and Nathan George for me is a better pick. J.B. McCollum, better player too. So I was fine not ranking him at all.
Plenty of upside.
Yes.
I'm
Mhm.
okay with not ranking him too.
Okay, finally a couple pet guys here. I guess Matt added some takes at the bottom, but so Jim, you were higher on Felix Okpara. You were higher on Cam Matthews. Anything you care to say about those two players? We talked about Big East a little bit.
Yeah, this is a little bit of the de-emphasis on defense, but I think Okpara could be like one of the three best rim protectors in the country in the Tennessee system. Like their defense is so elite every single year. I think he's a better defender than Adu was. Now he has some competition for playing time with the aforementioned Estrella. So maybe he's not going to be racking up minutes, but I think he could thrive there. And then Cam Matthews, I should have gone to bat more for because I think he's one of the five best defenders in the entire country. Most versatile. He can guard any single position. And he also led Mississippi State in assists, which I found out as I was writing about them. Like he was the trigger man offensively. They found a way to use him despite him being a truly awful
Horrible,
shooter.
horrible shooter.
Um,
Horrible shooter.
but I just think he has found enough ways to be really good despite not being a scorer. And man, the defense is just unbelievable. He's so good on that end.
Yeah, Cam Matthews definitely one guy I probably could have paid more attention to in these rankings for sure. For me, a couple of guys I was apparently higher on. Trayvon Brazil. I'm still quite a big believer in him. I think he's insanely talented and still is a pro. He's off injury. He has not quite lived up to that potential yet.
And there was some off-court drama last year that
Yeah,
I don't
rumors.
want to get into because it's all rumors. But yeah,
Yes. Milan Momcilovic from Iowa State. I moved him down a little bit. I had him really high to start. I just like this guy. Sophomore year at Iowa State, top 10 team in the country, and he's going to be a major reason why they improve offensively. I just think he has a lot of upside.
I feel bad, Kai. I should have. I don't know why I let you stand on an island here. I should have
Oh, you
been
love him.
taking up arms with you. I do love him. He was in my like top. I think I had him like 120th or something. I should have been more gung ho here. He's going to be awesome. You were right. You were right.
Thanks. I love Iowa State. I'm surprised that I was like the only guy on Stephen Ashworth. You guys, I think, rated him like top 50 like 2 years ago. Um,
I feel burned.
he's still a great
I was so
player. He's
wrong
still a great
last year. I
shooter.
was so wrong last year with, oh, he'll be just fine fit at Creighton, and then Nemhard was all like, I ranked Nemhard like 15th this year at Gonzaga. He was unbelievable, and yeah, he can win games for them, like the home game against UConn, where the last team to beat UConn, he was
Mhm.
a fireball, but he can be a little streaky and admittedly is not very good on defense and doesn't get to the rim. So I could have been a little higher, but he made my top 150, not my top 100.
Matt's not here to defend his. Javon Hadley, Jim, was a guy that Matt had in his top 100 for a long time. And Jim and I didn't get it. Again, this is why I think Matt sorted by O rating, because his O rating was very high. He had a very high 3 point percentage. He did nothing wrong from a field goal percentage perspective. He was just the fourth, fifth option on Colorado last year. It just didn't make any sense to us.
Yeah, and then we went. I think Matt kind of backed off it a little when he went to Discord for support on who they thought was going to be Louisville's best player, and all the Louisville fans ranked Hadley like fourth or fifth. But he was like, he might be their best player, and it's like, I can't get there. I think he's a really nice role guy. He is what he is. He's going to be a fifth year. I don't think there's any unlockable ceiling for Hadley. Just a nice piece, but not a top 100 guy. So sorry, Matt, you're not here to defend yourself.
Yeah, Chaz Lanier, Matt was higher on too. Jim and I are a little skeptical of him translating fully to Tennessee. Fantastic at North Florida. North Florida is a weird system, man. I'm just like cautioning folks that he's not Dalton Connect. It's not going to happen. Um,
Yeah, I'll probably try to reiterate this when we do our SEC preview, but I'll say it right now, like a 113 O rating, average 12 a game. Like
which is
he will
good.
be a good player,
Good player.
and I don't think that's top 100.
Yeah. Okay, so Matt like pulled a couple snips here. We'll try to finish up here soon. We're going a little bit long, but uh, yes, only two A10 players on the list, said one person in the Discord. Yeah, it's tough when there's, like Jim said, 80 Power 5 teams. It's tough. We had Robbie Avila from SLU and Eric Reynolds from St. Joe's. ZB from SLU, the assistant coach, said Max Scholga should have been included. I think Jim actually did include him in his list.
I think I had him like 80th, and I ended up backing him all the way down to 111th, and I'm a coward for doing so.
It,
Stick to your guns.
Ryan Odom, VCU's coach, told me Scholga is a future pro. So I totally buy into that. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember towards the end of the year last year, he like I might have had like a little ankle thing in post game stuff. He's like, that guy is our engine. We absolutely need him. Should have gone more to war for Max.
Illinois fans are going crazy for Kasparis
Jakusionis.
Yakuchosionis, whatever. I don't know. I need to see
He
more
could
of
be.
him. I
Could
should
be
watch
awesome.
his tape more. Yeah, he could be, but he was mentioned by us.
It is a lot to ask for the competition he played against in Europe, which again was not like high top level adults. He was playing like kind of equivalent of high school over there. And I know the reports out of practice are these great, and the tape is solid. He gets downhill really well and he can shoot, but it is not like a how dare you not rank him. Maybe he ends up like a clear top 100 guy, or maybe he is another foreign dud as a freshman because there's a huge adjustment period. We'll see.
We talked about the freshmen. Yep, just 4 freshmen this year in our top 100. One question: thought process on Great Osabor being so high. A little surprising, actually. I mean, Osabor, I think, would be pretty receptive to be rated so highly in our rankings. He was top 25, I think. He's freaking awesome, and he's with his coach still, Danny Sprinkle, who knows exactly how to use him. And I'm not worried about him translating Jim to now the Big Ten at Washington.
Yeah, he was the Mountain West Player of the Year in a conference that got 6 NCAA tournament teams, had Jaden Ledee and Isaiah Stevens. They picked him. I know they took first, and maybe it was a best player on best team thing, so those guys might have been slightly better than him last year, but I know he's a great offensive hub. He does everything. He can pass a little bit too. He's a massive just bully ball, bull in a china shop in the paint. Could be a little weird playing him next to a 5, and maybe that's what ends up being tougher for context for him, but I just think he's really good, and staying with his coach made me confident he'll remain good, like you said.
Agreed. All right. That does it.
That does it. Do we have any reviews, Kai?
We have no reviews. Yeah. Hey,
All right.
leave us a
Well,
review. Go ahead. iTunes. 5 stars. Leave us a comment. question, whatever you have to do. Again, please do check out the Burn Discord. We are partnered with Trilly Donovan. The link is in the show description. Thank you for joining us. Next week, Jim, is
But Jeopardy. That's
Jeopardy.
right, folks. One of everybody's favorite off-season episodes. We welcome back Mr. Russ, aka Second to Madness on Twitter. Also Duke Better on Twitter, a great Duke fan and a friend of this program. He is returning about 2 weeks before his child's due date to grill us on irrelevant college basketball trivia. So get ready for that, folks. Get ready to watch along or listen along. Yell at us for being dumb as we're on the spot and can't come up with the answers. We'll see if the final round is very skewed to Matt once again, but
It
we're
was
excited.
it was way more fun last year on YouTube. It was fun getting the interaction from people in the chat as well. So very much look forward to that. Okay, that does it.
Yep.
From Kai and Jim, so long. Enjoy your, I don't know, weekend. Go college basketball.